Okay, so we are all the way at the end of Shemona Perakim, the end of the 8th Perek of Shemona Perakim. And the subject of the 8th Perek, which we were preoccupied with in the past couple of Shurim, maybe the past 5, 6, 7 Shurim, was in where the Rambam establishes that we have free will and we have the freedom and liberty to choose whatever we want. We're not compelled or manipulated, not internally, not externally, by forces of nature or pseudoscience or genetics, and even by Hashem's knowledge and will. So, and that is the foundation of the entire Torah. And we dealt with some psukim that might seem to contradict this idea that a person has absolute free will. Now, the Rambam gets all the way to so we established that already, and we spoke about the consequences sort of having this world view, right? A worldview that has free will and versus a worldview that is not governed by a person's free will. And now the Rambam says, I have one more issue that I cannot avoid talking about. It seems that the Rambam really does not want to talk about this, but he feels like he has to, because everyone walks around with this question. And that is perhaps the most famous question regarding Bechira. Perhaps something that me and the Rambam have in common is that I too despise this question, but maybe for a different reason than the Rambam does. But so let's see this. This is the famous question of Yediah and Bechira. So let's see what the Rambam says. I don't know if we'll be able to pack all this into one shir. Let's read some Rambam and then we'll think together. And the only thing that we have left that remains in this matter that we have to discuss is so there's one thing that we must discuss. I did not want to touch this topic at all. I feel like it was necessary. It was necessary for me to discuss this topic. Who Yediah Hashem es Hasidus. Lefi sheitana shatoin aleinu ba mi shechoshev sha'adam mocher chalatziz v'alameri v'shekol putlas adam en lebechira ben hodam chras leberatzon Hashem. Okay, so the question is like this. He says, because this is a very popular question, everyone knows of this idea, and a lot of people want to prove that there is no Bechira. So a lot of people walk around, and when you tell them that a person has free will and a person has absolute free will, and a person is the one that ultimately controls all his fate, and a person, his entire life is in his own hands, so there are many arguments that people use against this idea. So most of them we discussed, and one of them is the fact that Hashem knows what the future will be. Being that Hashem knows what the future will be, so therefore our free will is an illusion. And why? So the Rambam explains this question. Because this person that brings this kasha and proposes it like this. He says like, the person says, Adam zeh, Yada Hashem emi tzadik harasha or lo yada. Okay, so this question bothers me in many different levels, but let's present the question. The question is like this: does Hashem know if a person is going to be a tzaddik or a rasha, or does he not know? Let's talk about someone eating Yom Kippur. Does Hashem know that this person is going to eat on Yom Kippur? So if you only have two options, right? This is a yes or no question. Okay. So now let's follow the logic. If you say Hashem does not know, right? Because you're on the team Bechira, so you want to say that a person has absolute free will. So if a person has free will, therefore you'll say that no, Hashem doesn't know if the person has free will, and he could really do whatever he wants, and therefore Hashem does not know beforehand what this person will choose. Okay, so you say by extension, what you're really saying is that Hashem is lacking, because if Hashem could retain new information, that means that there was information that Hashem was lacking. Right? That's really what you're saying. So if Hashem could find out new information, if you can provide new information, that means that Hashem was lacking. To say Hashem is lacking is impossible thing to say. It's unacceptable in any way to say that Hashem is lacking. Hashem is the most pure, complete self-existing entity, and there's nothing that can be added on. Because let's just explain why. Even though these things are axiomatic, but we have to explain why. Because if you say that Hashem could find out new information, then it means that Hashem's existence is limited. And if Hashem's existence is limited, then it's then Hashem is a limited entity, and that's a God that we don't believe in. The God that we believe in is beligvul, right? Hashem is not limited in any way. If Hashem is limited in His knowledge, Hashem could just as well be limited in size. And you can make Him a person, you can make Him whatever entity you want Him to be. Being that Hashem is eternal and has no beginning and no end, is in space, is in time, and it's in any other possible limitation that one can impose on another being. Therefore, we have to, when we say that Hashem's existence is pure, and what we're really saying also is that Hashem is absolutely perfect. That's what it means. Perfect. Perfect is 100%. There's nothing you could add on, there's nothing you could take off, and there's nothing that possibly could be added to it. Therefore, if you say that Hashem does not know if I'm going to eat Yom Kippur or not, then you're saying that there's something that Hashem's knowledge is lacking, because Hashem could gain new knowledge. Gaining new knowledge implies that there's something missing. That's not something that could be. On the other hand, if you say that Hashem knew, then again, so Hashem knew that I'm going to eat Yom Kippur would mean that I have to eat Yom Kippur. Because if I will not eat Yom Kippur, then I will prove that Hashem's knowledge is flawed, which again means that Hashem did not know anything. So when I say Hashem knows, it means that Hashem's knowledge is connected to the fact of what's going on over here. So when Hashem knows that I'm going to eat Yom Kippur, I have no way of not eating Yom Kippur. Therefore, my free will is an illusion. So only one of these things could be true. Either I have free will, and my free will is true, authentic, inherent, it's really free will, and therefore Hashem does not know. And if Hashem does not know, it means Hashem's knowledge is lacking, Hashem's existence is lacking, Hashem's entire nature is a lacking nature. It's not a nature of utter perfection, it's a nature that is dependent on other things, because he knows things, he gains information just like we gain information when things develop. And that would mean that Hashem yesterday was lacking the knowledge of what's going to happen today, and that would make His entire existence limited in every single way. And because it's unacceptable to us to say that Hashem's existence is limited, so we have to say that Hashem's knowledge is not limited. And if Hashem's knowledge is not limited, then really it's impossible to say that I had a real free will. That's the question. Okay? So now, okay. So let's see what the Rambam says. So the Rambam's answer to this is like this. Okay, yeah. I want to point out a few things. First of all, okay, let's see what the Rambam says. L'chein, shama mimeni, listen to what I have to say, says the Rambam, and think about it well. Ki hu emes b'li sofek. This is the absolute ultimate truth. V'hu, ki kvar esbar b'limud adahus. So when you learn theology, kaloimar, ma'ashem ever lateva, meaning metaphysics. Okay, so when you study metaphysics, you understand. Shashem yisrael eni Yediah b'Yediah. ולא יחי בחיים, עד שיהיו בידיעה שני דברים, כמוי האדם ודעתו. Okay, so this is, let me say what the Rambam says, and then we're going to, then we'll see what he says inside. Basically, what the Rambam says like this. The Rambam says that you have a big misunderstanding. You look at knowledge Like you look at your own knowledge, right? So you are who you are, and then you have knowledge. Now you and your knowledge are two different things, right? You have you, because you could have you without your knowledge, right? Let's say the knowledge of how anything is made, of how a table is made, or the nature of the table, or the nature of the heavens, whatever it is, right? So this knowledge, there's you without the knowledge, because yesterday you didn't have this knowledge and you retained this knowledge. I mean, not you retained, you attained this knowledge. So now you are you, and your knowledge is a separate existence that is not related to you. Now you could attain knowledge, you could forget the knowledge, you could lose the knowledge. So that's how, when you think about Hashem's Yediah, you sort of envision and imagine the same thing, because the way it's not only a language issue, it's a conceptual issue. Because the way you perceive the idea of knowledge is the way you perceive your own knowledge. And therefore, you draw the conclusion that if I were to know, right? So let's just put myself sort of in the shoes of Hashem. So if I know with absolute certainty that you are going to eat Yom Kippur, right? So I'm standing Erev Yom Kippur now, and I know with absolute certainty that you're going to eat Yom Kippur. Then what that mean is that what that would imply, obviously, is that you don't really have free will. Now that's granting that my knowledge is 1,000%. Right? If I have a time machine, that's sort of the idea. If I have a time machine and I see the script, I see the entire tape of the next 48 hours, I got access to the tape. Then you would, by extension, you would not have free will. You might think you have free will, but the fact that I know with absolute certainty what you are going to do means that you don't really have an option of doing otherwise. So that's the way we perceive knowledge. So when we think about Hashem's knowledge, we think of it the same way. Says the Rambam, Hashem and his knowledge are very different than you and your knowledge. Because Hashem and his knowledge are not two different things, they're one of the same. Now this is advanced metaphysics, and there's a Pirkei Nevuchim, and the Rambam discusses about it. Aristotle, in his book Metaphysics, discusses this in great length. And there's other sources where the Arab philosophers deal with this issue. The Rambam in multiple places deals with this issue, and the Rambam in Mishnah Torah also in Hilchos Tshuva mentioned, and in Yesod Torah deals with this thing. And what he says is like this: when by us we are limited beings, and us as limited beings, all our attributes, all our qualities and faculties are separate, right? So you have you, and then you have your strength. Now I can have you without your strength. I can have you without your wisdom, because I could, right? Because your wisdom comes and goes. You're born without it. It's things you attain, things you retain, things you work on, things you develop. So these things, you have you, and then you have all your faculties that are sorts of part and extensions of your being, but they are not one in the same. By Hashem, because Hashem's existence is pure and perfect, and in something that and it's limitless and boundless, therefore you can't split it up, right? Because if you isolate Hashem's strength, and that is an entity of its own, then that would imply that is limited. Hashem's strength is limited because it's something that is separated. It's something that has a beginning, has an end. And it also means that Hashem's existence is not perfect because there's Hashem and his strength. What do you do with Hashem without his strength? Where is that, right? If you separate these two things, then what is Hashem without his strength? Then Hashem's natural existence is not perfect, because there's something outside of his existence that he needs sort of for himself. So when we say that Hashem is perfect, it means that all Hashem's attributes and all the midas and whatever it is, they are all one and the same. They're not separated. Hashem's wisdom and Hashem's knowledge and Hashem's strength and Hashem's benevolence and compassion and not whatever it is, they are all the pure existence of Hashem's own nature. Now, this is obviously something very difficult to comprehend, and not only difficult, it's sort of impossible to comprehend, because we don't comprehend at all, being that our minds are finite, our minds are limited. We cannot comprehend things that are beyond the capacity of our finite brains. So it just won't work. we could comprehend very large things. We comprehend galaxies that are billions and trillions of light years and all these things. But all these things are limited by definition. When it comes to infinite, we don't really have the tools to think in that capacity. Therefore, we don't understand what it means to say that there's a perfect existence that is absolutely perfect in its own nature and in its own being, and everything is within, right? This is sort of what the Rambam speaks in Lent and Moed Nevuchim, and Aristotle says this also in metaphysics, that when you think, you think of things outside of your existence, right? When you think of whatever you think, if you think of whether it's the nature of a table, the nature of ketchup, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, you think your thoughts are extensions. They're outside of your own existence. Hashem, being that Hashem's existence is perfect and complete, then when we say sort of that Hashem only thinks about, he could only think about himself, because his existence is, meaning if Hashem could gain knowledge, right? If there's something outside of his existence, that would mean that his existence is not perfect, and that would mean that his knowledge, right? When we say that Hashem thinks about something else that's not himself, then it means that Hashem's knowledge is lacking, and now he gained a new piece of information from something that's outside of his existence, and that's impossible to say. Therefore, when we say Hashem's knowledge is perfect, then what Hashem really, Kaviyachol, thinks about, Hashem's thinking about his own existence and his own true nature. So that is, when the Rambam says that Hashem and his knowledge are one, that's sort of what he's saying. They're not two different things. So when we talk about divine knowledge, we're talking about divinity. We're talking about God himself. It's all tied into the nature of God himself. And therefore, says the Rambam, so what you're really doing is like this. You're thinking about your own brain, and your own brain is limited in nature, and your brain has a time lapse, and it has very specific limitations. Hashem's brain, so to speak, Hashem's knowledge is of a completely different existence, is of a divine realm, and it is one and the same of his own existence. So they are not two separate things. You don't have Hashem and his knowledge. It's all basically thinking about Hashem's existence itself. And it's not something you can really comprehend. So therefore, the answer, to come back to your answer of Yediah and Bechira, the Rambam really says, you're asking about something that you don't understand. Because you don't really understand Hashem's knowledge. You don't understand the mechanics of it. You don't understand the nature of it. You don't understand any part of it. So it's the question really. You don't really have a right to ask the question. That's really what the Rambam says. Let's see this inside. He says like this: if Hashem would know with knowledge, if Hashem would know Hashem would gain knowledge like a person does, then there would be many gods, so to speak, because Hashem's knowledge is divine, and because you're saying that Hashem has knowledge, Hashem has his own existence, and he has knowledge, and Hashem's knowledge is divine, then you would have two gods. Because you have Hashem and you have his knowledge, and they're both divine, so you would have two gods, and that's obviously impossible. And why? Because you would have Hashem, and then the knowledge through which he knows, and then the divine life, which is another thing, divine existence, and God's ability and potential, and whatever you want to call it, and his wisdom and his strength and his benevolence, all these things, right? If you would say that each of these things are separate, then you have sort of 30 gods, which, by the way, is the polytheistic perception of reality, that there are a lot of divine natures that all exist in the same realm, and they all fight over control. But that is really the polytheistic view. The polytheistic view is that there is a God of strength, there is a God of wisdom, there is a God of fertility, there is a God of war, and all these things are divine. They're all divine, but they don't come to one place. And the entire Torah is built against this idea. The entire Torah is built that there is one existence that does not need anything else. Everything is within his own existence, and it's perfect, and it doesn't need anything else. And everything else that exists as an extension of the true existence of this being, and this is Hashem. So therefore, when we say that there is divine wisdom and divine strength and so on and so forth, they are all within the nature of God's own existence. They are not extensions. They are not broken down, limited particles. They are not limbs, so to speak. They are part of the nature of God's own existence. The Rambam says this is pop science. This is pop metaphysics. This is not advanced metaphysics at all. This is just something that I want. This is metaphysics for the masses. So I just gave you an easy answer so you could understand what I'm saying, because I know this is a question that bothers a lot of people. Because there are very strong arguments, sort of. There are arguments that meaning I have strong proofs to support this idea that Hashem and His knowledge are one of the same. And this is a whole discussion that we could have about this. We could debate this. We could have proofs and arguments for and against. But this is not for the layperson. So therefore, I'm just going to give you the idea itself. So what we established is that Hashem's shehu yisale ta'arav v'ta'arav hu. Hashem is His attributes, and His attributes are Him. They're one of the same. They're not two separate things. Therefore, we can when we talk about Hashem's knowledge, what we say is that Hashem is He is the knowledge, He is the one who knows, and He is what is known, all at the same time. Meaning, you as a person, when you think of an idea, right? So you have there are three different things over here. You have the thinker, which is you. Then you have your brain, and then you have the object that you're thinking about, right? The subject. So you have these three things. You have the thinker, right? You have Hashem. So when you think, right? When you think of whatever it is, right? When you think of a table, so you have you, okay? Then you have the table, and then you have your thought, right? These are three separate things. By Hashem is the thinker, Hashem is the thought itself, and He is the subject of the thought also, right? Because we said Hashem thinks about sort of kaviyachol, His own existence, because that is the truest and most ultimate thought, and Hashem does not think about anything outside of His existence, because that would mean that there's something outside of His existence that makes Him whole, right? So therefore, Hashem is at the same time the thinker, the thought, and the subject. Hashem is everything at the same time. Now, this is something that might be very difficult to understand, but which is sort of the point that the Rambam is trying to prove. Being that the Rambam says, I could prove to you, if you would be an advanced philosopher, I could prove to you that when it comes to Hashem's thought, Hashem is at the same time the thinker, the thought, and the thinker, the thought, and the object, which is something that you can't really comprehend, but I could convince you that has to be the case. So being that is the case, Hashem's thought is very different than your thought. So therefore, don't ask me questions that are built on. So this is really the crux. This is really what the Rambam is saying, to drive it home. You're asking me questions based on the template that is your own brain. And you think that being that I can't know something at a time, and that person still would have free will, because these two things would contradict each other. Therefore, I ask a question: how could it be that Hashem knows and I still have free will? Says the Rambam, you're comparing apples to oranges. You're comparing your brain and your thought and your knowledge, which is very finite and very limited and that sort of one thing, and Hashem's thought, which is completely of a different nature. The only thing that they share in common is terminology, for whatever reason. But you can't ask a question it's a language issue. This is not a real issue, because in real science, your thought and your perception of thought and your perception of knowledge is absolutely nothing, zilch in common with divine knowledge. You have nothing in common. Your mind and Hashem's mind have nothing in common. They never saw each other, they don't act the same, they don't operate the same, they're not made of the same nature. Therefore, when you ask a question about Hashem's knowledge and you base it on your own knowledge, you're asking a pathetic, stupid, silly question. That's really what the Rambam is saying. Now, what's so, and the Rambam says himself, the Rambam says the same thing is about His existence. Hashem is life. Hashem is Hashem is life itself, right? He is the one who is alive, and He is the source of life, right? So by you have you who is alive, you have where you take your life from, and then you have the nature of life. By Hashem, all these things are true at the same time. Hashem is life itself. Hashem is alive, and He is the one who, and He is a self-generating life, which at this sort of at this, these things don't separate, right? Whereby our attributes are separate from us, our knowledge is separate from us, our life, our nature of life is separate from us. You could take it away, you could get it, and it comes from a different place. So by Hashem, all these things are the same. They all are one complete being. Now, these are complicated ideas. Don't expect that over here in 2 lines, you're really going to comprehend what I'm trying to say. These things are advanced, very deep, very philosophical ideas that you need a lifetime of metaphysics and real study to get any comprehension of what you don't understand. Because no one understands. We are all limited. No matter who you are, even if you're a Navi, even if you're Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem said, and because to really comprehend, and this is how the Rambam explained it in the 7th Pirkei of Shemona Prakim, that being the Moshe Rabbeinu is a finite being, he cannot understand limitless, infinite existence. So anyone, no matter who you are, you will never comprehend the fact of Hashem's oneness and Hashem's existence and the nature of Hashem's being. No one can understand that. But if you are going to be advanced in metaphysics and in philosophy, you'll understand what you don't understand, because you're going to understand what Hashem's existence has to, not really what it has to be, but what it can't be. That's really what the Rambam establishes in Yesod Torah and Nevuchim, and that is sort of that we know Hashem not from, we don't really have any positive ideas about Hashem because we don't really comprehend its existence, but we could make certain conclusions and logical conclusions of what it can't be. Let's say we say that Hashem can be limited. If Hashem can be limited, then He can't have a body, He can't be limited to time, and you can't separate Him from His midas. All these things come from the fact we know what Hashem is not. Right? So being that Hashem is not limited, so I know that Hashem does not have a body, and I know that Hashem is not limited by time, and so on and so forth. So I could only really know what Hashem is not. I can't really know what Hashem is. But that is advanced philosophy. Back to the Rambam's point. So let's just read more inside. Based on this great fundamental idea, this is diktuk, but when we say chei paroi, we mean the life of paroi. So there's paroi and then there's the life. And when we say chei paroi, we mean the life of paroi. Chei nafshecha, the life of your soul. But when we never say Chai Hashem, we say Chai Hashem. Why do we say Chai Hashem? Because Chai and Hashem are not connected. It doesn't mean the life of Hashem. Hashem does not have a life. Hashem is life. There's no life of Hashem. So that's why we say Chai Hashem and not Chai Hashem. That's what everyone is saying. And because that the life of Hashem, that He is His own essence, and His essence is His life. They're not two separate things. They're not things that you can separate. If they're not things that you can separate, they're not things you can connect. Right? If you attribute two things, one to the other, you say the life of, so you're attributing this to that. You're attributing there's Hashem, there's Pirkei, let's say, Lahavdil, there's Pirkei, and then there's His life. And I could talk about Chei Pirkei, the life of Pirkei, because there's Pirkei and then there's life. By Hashem, I can't say this because there's no life of Hashem. Hashem is life. Hashem is life itself. So they're not two separate things. So I say Chai Hashem, which means Hashem lives. It's sort of a step. V'kavana shehu v'datoi davar echad. To wrap it up, says the Rambam. So now we established that metaphysically, there is no way. There's no way we can really comprehend the nature of Hashem's existence. The end of the Metziosoi, Sibis sheyevoda behen, v'koitze sechlenu, melahasik koitze oranam melahasik or Hashemesh. She'ein ze mitzad chod shezor Hashemesh. Okay, it's just There's so much that we could talk about that it's like weighing me down. But what the Rambam over here is saying is the reason why we can't comprehend the nature of Hashem's existence is not because Hashem's existence is lacking in any way, just the opposite. So just like we can't look into the sun. Now, why can't we look into the sun? Why can't we see the sun? Is the reason why we can't see the sun, is that a problem with the sun? Is that because there's nothing to see, or it's too weak so you can't see it? Says the Rambam, no. The reason why we can't see it is because we don't have the capacity. Our eyes do not have this is also based on, meaning this is obviously true, but the reasoning for it is somewhat outdated. But the idea is that our eyes don't have the capacity to handle, the light that's incoming from the sun, therefore it's blinded out. That's why we can't see it. We can't see it because there's so much to see, meaning the sun is so big and the light is so immense and our eyes are so small, therefore we get blind when we see it. The same thing over here is Hashem's existence is so beyond the scope of our capacity, therefore we just don't have the ability to understand Hashem's existence. Therefore, just like we don't understand the nature of Hashem's existence itself, we don't have a way of understanding Hashem's knowledge. And we can't grasp it in any way. Because saying that you understand Hashem's knowledge is akin to saying that you understand Hashem's existence. Understanding Hashem's existence, first of all, that itself would mean Hashem is limited. Because if your limited mind, if your limited brain could envelop in it Hashem's existence, that would limit Hashem tremendously. And obviously, being that Hashem's nature is infinite, so you don't understand His existence, you don't understand His knowledge, you don't understand any of it. This is a wonderful thing. Now, these people that ask this question, this is the mistake that they make. Right? Meaning, they think that, they assume that Hashem's being and Hashem's nature is something that they could grasp, and something that they could comprehend, because they are comparing Hashem's knowledge and Hashem's mind and Hashem's brain, so to speak, to their own. And that's their mistake. That's where, because they don't understand that Hashem and His knowledge are one, and just like you don't understand Hashem's existence, you don't understand His knowledge, and therefore this whole thing is a waste of time. I just want to go all the way till then, because while we're at it, let's go. That it's absolutely foolish to think and try, and this attempt to understand Hashem's knowledge is foolish. It's futile. You're not going anywhere. There's no way you can really comprehend any of it. And the whole expedition, sort of, the whole journey to go understand and gain understanding in the nature of Hashem's knowledge is all for naught. And all we have to know is Yediah, we know, basically, just like we know that Hashem exists, we know that Hashem knows. That's about it. You know that Hashem exists? Yeah, we know that Hashem exists. We know that Hashem knows? Yeah, we know that Hashem knows. Now, what does it mean that Hashem knows? I don't know. What does it mean that Hashem exists? I don't either know. Because I don't understand the nature of His existence. Just like you don't understand the nature of His existence, you don't understand the nature of His knowledge. If you don't understand the nature of His knowledge, you can't ask a question about something you don't understand. And this is such a powerful thought and this was missed. Let's continue. And if someone asks you, how does Hashem knowledge work? I don't understand. Just like I don't understand the nature of His existence itself. There was someone who made an attempt to understand Hashem's knowledge, and Eve says, you can't understand the nature of Hashem's existence and His knowledge. Let's go back. Let's backtrack. Okay? So, what we know is that you control your own actions. Your actions are in your own hands. You can do whatever you want. Hashem does not involve Himself in your free will. He does not engage in it. He's not involved. You have free will. Okay, so let's just go back to where we were yesterday. And that's where we established that a person has free will. And if a person has free will, therefore he has to learn. Because if he learns, he knows what to do and what not to do. And there is consequences because he has free will. And because when he acts of his own free will, and he's not manipulated and not compelled in any way. Therefore he carries the responsibility to his actions. And therefore he gets rewarded and punished. And that is the reason for the entire Torah. That is the reason for the entire Pirkei Avos. And that is the reason for the entire Maaseh Bereshis. And that is the tachlis why a person is here, is to do the right thing and not to do the wrong thing. So the entire system, and this is established from nature, from perception, from experience, from our own senses. This is something we proved beyond any reasonable doubt, and that is that every person has absolute free will. And he controls every single action that he does in his entire life is absolutely in his own hands. And no one, not nature, not science, not God's knowledge, not nothing, it compels him or manipulates it in any way possible. Now, what's with Hashem's knowledge? I don't know. Tell me about Hashem's knowledge. Meaning, first of all, let's finish. If you ask me about Hashem's knowledge, being the fact that Hashem knows what I'm going to do, how does that affect my free will? What the Rambam really says is, I don't know what you're talking about, because I don't really know what Hashem's knowledge means. If you could explain what that means, then we could have this conversation. And that's why this Rambam is so powerful, and it seems like many Rishonim and Achronim missed the point. Now, if I would be the one saying it, then you could get very upset at me for saying this. But this is something that obviously was discussed in great length in the Rishonim and Achronim. The Ravid, Al-Asar, the Ravid in Hilchis Tshuva. So let's just finish the Rambam. This is what we wanted to say. I have to finish over here, and now we're going to start learning Pirkei Avos, and this is the end of Shemona Prakim. You know what? I think we went long enough today. Tomorrow, maybe we'll have a longer discussion about Yediah and Bechira. Let's just wrap it up. For the past couple of shiurim, and then meaning we'll have one more shiur on the sugi of Yediah and Bechira. Let's just establish what the Rambam said, and then we're going to. What we established without any doubt is that a person has free will. And the Rambam says not only Pirkei Avos is built on this premise that a person has free will, and therefore a person can make changes in his life, and it is the entire Torah, right? There's a reason why Hashem doesn't talk to ketchup bottles and peanut butter and to alligators, because there's no one to talk to. They don't really have free will. The reason why Hashem talks to us is because you can tell me do and don't, because I have the will, I can act on the do's and don'ts, and therefore you could also reward and punish. And then you could say that Avraham Avinu is a good guy and Bilam is a bad guy. If no one has free will, then Avraham and Bilam are it's all a joke. There's nothing. No one ever had free will, and they're all robots and puppets and pins and pawns, and therefore there is, if you take away the idea that a person acts out of his own free will, then the entire system, the entire Torah, and everything falls apart on the spot. Now, it doesn't really make a difference how you're going to make an argument that I don't have free will. If that is through astrology, which the Rambam thinks is pathetic science, or whether it's by Hashem's knowledge, which we'll talk about in a second, or it is by nature. It doesn't make a difference. If a person doesn't have free will, then everything is for naught. The Rambam says, I could prove to you that you have free will just by your perception of life. You think you have free will. Don't argue with me because you really think you have free will. Think about yourself. You know you have free will. Intuitively you know you have free will. Look around every person, the way you talk to people, and the way you lead your life, and the way every civil government is built, and obviously the way the Torah is built, is all on the premise of free will. So we all have free will. Let's not fool ourselves. Now, being that we have free will, we have to deal with a couple of kashas, in Torah, in Chazal, and whatever it is, and we dealt with all those kashas. Now we had this big bomb kasha, and that was based on Hashem knowing the future. If Hashem knows the future, then how can I have free will? That was this big kasha. When the Rambam answers to that is that this question is a silly question. Why is this a silly question? And this is we have to be very sensitive to what the Rambam is saying, because this is what I think is key and missed by it. What the Rambam is saying is that you're asking a question about something you don't understand, and it's not a smart thing to do. You can't ask a question about something you don't understand. If I tell you, let's say, that all elephants have tusks and have long noses, just whatever. Now you say that there's a hypothetical pink elephant somewhere that does not have whatever it is. Now you're going to ask me kashas, you're going to drive me up the wall. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. So meaning you're asking about something you never saw, you don't understand. If I really ask you, explain this Hashem's knowledge that you're talking about. You're very bothered by Hashem knowing what I'm going to do tomorrow. What does Hashem knowing mean? Just talk to me in plain language. What does Hashem knowing mean? Can you explain knowledge? When you're talking about divine knowledge, you can't explain it. because you don't understand it. So why are you asking something that you don't understand? Fine. So you don't understand. Now, the only thing you do have to know is, just like you know Hashem exists and you don't know how Hashem exists because you don't understand His nature. So there, you know that Hashem knows. Hashem He's in the know of what's going on over here. That we know. Fine. We know that. You don't know anything beyond that, so you can't ask any questions. Which is the only real answer you give to this question. So we'll see tomorrow different ways how Rishonim and Achronim dealt with this issue. I think it's an interesting sugya to explore, but that's the Rambam's answer. So we'll pick up from here tomorrow, and L'chaim Zatzke Bench.